Welcome back to the Small Business Show, where you get to hear the journey, find the challenges, and create solutions. I'm your host, Lori Brooks, and today I am super thrilled that I have the opportunity to introduce you to one of the nation's top franchise consultants, Bob Bernotas. Bob is passionate about helping people achieve the greatest level of satisfaction and success through franchise ownership. With years of experience guiding clients towards top performing franchise brands, Bob provides personalized guidance and support throughout the entire process of franchise exploration. Whether you're looking for an exit strategy from corporate life or a semi passive income opportunity, Bob is here to help you find your perfect match and create a brighter future. Bob, welcome. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Lori. It's wonderful to be here.
It is wonderful to have you. I'm super excited to have an opportunity to meet virtually, but also to dive into your entrepreneurial journey. But before we do, as you know, we're going to rewind that clock just a bit. I
Uh-oh.
want to go back, way back to the days of, say, junior high or high school. Think back to the days of, a time when a mentor or an aunt or an uncle would have asked you, what is it you want to do when you grow up? What do you feel like your answer was to that question way back
Oh,
when?
well, it certainly has changed over the years, but I wanted to be a professional football player. When I
Ah,
discovered I wasn't going to be big enough for that, then that kind of waned, and I started going in other directions. My default positions, but default positions are often what you're really meant to do, right?
there you go. Exactly. No, I truly understand. I'll tell you, I'll share a funny story that's no longer going to be a
Please.
secret after I share it now.
Uh-oh.
But way back in high school, I actually wanted to play football myself. And my mother was hands down against the idea of me playing
Hmm.
football. And you know what? I just thank God that she,
Good
stopped me from
call.
pursuing such a pursuit.
Well, let me guess. You ran track.
I did. That I did. How did
Yeah.
you guess?
Well, because if you were pursuing football, had that interest, you had to be fast because you weren't going
There
to
you
be
go.
bigger than the guys. So, and track and football go hand in hand with skill positions. So,
That's very true. Good logic there. I
yeah,
appreciate that. Thank you.
sure.
So, enough about me. So, you were thinking about football, but what was it for you that kind of made that pivot in your thought process? What were the steps for you that kind of took you from, okay, this is a thought process and an idea, to actually becoming CEO and founder of Franchise with Bob?
Well, let's see. So in high school, my junior year of high school, I transferred to a different school, and things went really well my junior year of high school. Really geared up to have a good football season my senior year. And the very first game of the season, I was playing both running back and safety, and like the first series at safety, I tore the rotator cuff in my left shoulder.
Ooh.
Didn't know it. Coach, they didn't know back then. They threw me back in the game. I couldn't lift my arm past this, but he said, "You're okay. Rub some dirt on it. You'll be okay." So I finished the game like that, discovered that this isn't working too well, and ended up losing my senior season.
Oh,
But leaned back on track because that was the other sport that I did. First, football was my first love, but I also ran track. My dad made me run track. Thank goodness he did. It ended up paying for college for me.
nice.
But I wanted to play football in college, and the track coach said, "You're not going to do that." I was on a D1
Mhm.
scholarship, and they own you, and they can pretty much,
Mm.
unless you're Bo Jackson and you can dictate what you want to do and play the sports you want to do, they're going to tell you what you're going to do. So I had my track career, and there's no place to go after that. So then I started looking for something to do, and I was lost for a number of years, not knowing what direction I wanted to go in. Tried a few different things. Ended up opening my first franchise when I was
Mm.
in my later 27, 28 years old. I opened my first West Coast video franchise back in the late 80s. I'm aging myself here. But fortunately, that I borrowed and begged to get the funds to do that. Fortunately, I opened that unit in December of 1986, and
Wow.
that January, it was actually the top unit in the chain. It just blew up. So I lucky a lot of it just in the right market, right location, and that allowed me to move on to do a bunch more of West Coast Video franchises. You know what happened to that industry? It's gone. Fortunately, got
So
out at a reasonable time. Yeah.
nice, very nice. No, so I'm gonna rewind for just a second, and I love
Mhm.
how you gave us that the steps up to, how football it really kind of made you pivot. The injury in football was what really kind of sparked that, okay, we're going in a different direction. Now you started off with track, and of course that's where that logic came from. It makes perfect sense now.
Mhm.
So I totally understand where you went with that. But what was it that introduced you to the concept of owning a franchise? What was it that started you there with West Coast Video?
Yeah, we'll see. My family was fairly entrepreneurial, or at least my brothers
Mm,
were. And one of my brothers, he was considerably older than me. He had a little advertising company, and I went to work for him for a while.
nice.
Then I thought, look, I can do this. And I kind of found another territory and I launched it on myself. Didn't have quite the success I wanted that, but that was my first foray into being an entrepreneur. Took another
Nice.
step with a little computer company back when, I don't know if you remember, when portable computers were first introduced. Remember Compact? It was like the
I
size of a
do.
suitcase and had a screen
I,
about yay big on it. So I got into that and was selling a software package to contractors. It was kind of strange bedfellows, contractors and medical offices, two different types of
Mhm.
software packages, and had a business doing that for a while. And I cut my teeth on it. I mean, did I make much money at it? No, but I learned a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
Then when I
Yeah.
had the opportunity and I had a little bit of money to invest, and I was able to get some other people to believe in me and invest in me, that's when I started with West Coast Video as my first franchise. And then I've been in franchising ever since. I've owned multiple franchise concepts and multiple units with each that I've built and sold over the years. Was CEO of a national chain. I've been consulting for a couple of decades. I used to consult exclusively on the side of franchise companies, helping them position for growth. Over the last 10, 12 years, I've morphed completely on the side of helping individuals or entities, be it a franchise investor or somebody coming from corporate America, wants to find a good franchise fit. I take them through the due diligence process, help them find the right franchise, help them get financing and so forth. So that's where I live now.
I absolutely adore it, Bob. Your brother kind of gave you that
Mhm.
itch and that entrepreneurial spirit and that opportunity to kind of dip your toes in the waters to understand what franchise ownership was all about. And
Absolutely.
from that, you grew that interest and not just grew the interest, but really kind of took all of the knowledge possible throughout your journey. And then went out and found the right community of people to help you make this new idea a reality where you really, got the funding, found that community of investors. That's not an easy thing to do. That's not an easy venture to start. So, to breeze by it as if it was a 2-second thing, I know it feels like it today. Because of course this is a story that is for you a story you've probably told a couple of times and
Few times.
definitely
Yeah.
something that and so I totally understand, but I want to make sure that the audience has an opportunity to really absorb how much knowledge you have in this industry. There's over 30 years of knowledge on the franchise ownership aspect of entrepreneurship, and it's not often a very well discussed topic. And it's actually not a topic that I even come across here on the show quite often. We don't have the opportunity to really explore the franchise opportunities. And so that's part of the reason why I really wanted to make sure to talk about how it is you were introduced to franchise ownership. I think it's something that so few people are introduced to as an opportunity in depth. It's more in passing, you may hear of it. So it was very interesting to hear how it is you were introduced to it, but then what the steps were that you took in order to really surround yourself, like I said, with the right group of people and absorb all the knowledge that you could in order to go ahead and say, I want to start off with West Coast Video. I want to start this franchise for myself. So once you dove into West Coast Video and that industry phased out and subsided, at what point during that transition did you decide, okay, time to pivot again? What was that moment for you there?
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was kind of a forced pivot, as you would
Yeah.
recognize. I saw the writing on the wall a bit
Hmm.
earlier. I knew technology was going to damage the industry. The economy had somewhat of an impact on my business as well, because I was in the lower middle income areas, and those were great for video rentals for a long time. But when the economy started to turn down, my business cut by 40%. Overall, my top line, and that basically made my profit margin go away. So I thought, now's a good time to pivot. I knew the technology piece was coming, but let's try to pivot sooner rather than
Hmm.
later. Now I've met so many people and so many smart people that I could use. I can leverage their knowledge over the years.
Hmm.
People that I've met in the video industry and some of the other industries that I've been in. But even prior to getting involved in franchising, just some of the people, my dad, I think, was a wonderful mentor of mine, just watching his work ethic. But I've had the opportunity to meet some other people, and I'm always pretty inquisitive and ask, how did you succeed? And so forth. But what forced me, I would say, into business ownership, and then I'll explain franchising, is that I wasn't cut out for corporate America.
Hmm.
Or it wasn't cut out for me, however you want to look at it.
There you
But
go.
I failed miserably in corporate America, and I've gotten fired from jobs. I've walked away from jobs. I can't handle the politics in corporate America
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So I stepped out of that, and I quickly discovered, by getting involved in a couple of businesses that I mentioned to you, that were startup businesses, not franchises. I said, wow, all these systems and processes and infrastructure need to be put into place. And that's a
Right.
massive, massive undertaking.
Hmm.
And then I was introduced to franchising, or at least the concept of franchising, and thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice to get into something? Infrastructure is created, the systems and processes are created. They already have found a way to success, a path to success. Now you
Hmm.
just step into that role and you duplicate that path to success. And you
Yes.
can get stood up and have success a heck of a lot more quickly. Yeah, you give a little bit to the franchise company by way of a royalty fee in order to buy that learning curve. But with the better companies, what I've discovered is that whatever royalty you're paying to them, it's usually
Hmm.
offset by the buying power, be it for services or a
Hmm.
product that you might need, that you have access to by being
Mm.
part of that franchise organization. I'm a massive believer in franchising now. Not only have I owned my, several concepts in multiple units, with each built and sold over the years, and doing my consulting work, but I'm still a franchise investor. I like to say, get high on my own supply, for lack of a better term. But when I see a good franchise opportunity come along, like about 4.5 months ago, I bought a franchise, and it came about because I was working with a local client of mine, and I showed him this concept. He absolutely loved it. It's a men's health concept. They do a variety of things, but reasonably priced in the 325 range to open a single unit. But it was going to be a little bit of a financial stretch for him. So I
Mhm.
raised my hand and said, I'll invest with you. And instead of talking about one unit, then we started talking about 3 units. I mentioned to a couple other friends of mine at the gym, and they said, oh, we love the concept. We'd like to invest. So quickly put together a little investment group, and we did 6 units. But we had to I'm in southeastern Pennsylvania. We actually had to go into central Jersey to do it, because everything in my market sold out too
Mhm.
quickly. So bought that concept. Haven't even opened the first one yet. Should happen in April. But then I came across another concept, similar situation, working with a client, local, and it's a cool concept, this tiny home concept, which is a really hot concept now.
Yep.
And I'm in process of negotiating and working on solidifying territory and everything. And looks like we're going to buy a second franchise 4.5, 5 months later. So wasn't planning on that, but if the opportunity arises, so I
Hmm.
do the consulting piece of this because
Hmm.
that's my passion. I really enjoy helping people find the right franchise, change their
Hmm.
lives, have that type of impact on their life, and in many cases introducing them to entrepreneurialism. But I invest in franchises because I want that residual income. I want to build something. I want to build equity in an asset that
Hmm.
I can later sell, and I do it for the cash flow. Not that I don't do really well with the business, the consulting business, but it's linear income. When I do it, I make money.
Right.
When I
Right.
stop doing it, I stop making money. Franchise up and running, and you're spending less and less time with it. It continues to feed you, and you're building
Mhm.
equity in an asset. So,
When you're investing in the franchise, but not necessarily running it, it is somewhat of a passive income. It's not
mhm,
100%,
right.
but it is somewhat of a passive income that can still help grow that portfolio. I love that you've taken that passion of building for yourself, but now really helping others to see how to go about building it for themselves. That truly is generally the next step in the evolution in the entrepreneurial journey. So it sounds like you have been enjoying every bit of this
I
journey. So
absolutely have. Yeah. And especially, I mean, being in the consulting role that I'm in, it allows me to keep my ear to the track, so to speak. So I
Mhm.
can see all the new concepts coming up. There's over
Mhm.
4,000 different franchise concepts out there. Honestly, two-thirds of them I wouldn't show to my clients, but there's some really,
Wow.
really good ones, and there's some really good emerging brands coming online. And depending upon what the client is looking for, I mean, it ranges anywhere from, okay, I have to quit my job and jump into this on a full-time basis
Mhm.
because they're requiring that. Everything becomes semi-passive or part-time after you have the right people in place, your systems are running smoothly, then you can start backing off. But
Mhm.
more and more franchise companies have developed semi-passive platforms now,
Mhm.
meaning they've developed more tools for the franchisee. They support the franchisees at a higher level. So instead
Mhm.
of jumping into something and having to do it full time and quit your corporate job, which most people don't want to do, these franchise companies have recognized that and decided we want to cast a wider net. We want to get people in corporate America, not require them to walk away from their corporate job, but maybe put
Mhm.
somewhere between 10 to 20 hours a week into the business and start building it on the side. If they
Mhm.
decide, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, they want an off ramp from corporate America and they've already built, beyond perhaps their corporate income, they can make that decision. If they want to stay in their corporate job and have that additional income on the side, that's a possibility as well. So most of my clients fall in that second bucket, the
Mhm.
semi-passive, or even there's some more passive franchises. Those
Mhm.
tend to be a little bit more expensive, but semi-passive franchises, they might start at 100K, go up to whatever you want to spend, but just so many that would fall in the 200 to 400K range that are great financial opportunities, better than some opportunities that you might spend $2 million on a franchise. So it's really finding the right concept as opposed to, how much is it going to cost? If I spend more,
Mhm.
am I going to get a better opportunity? No, that's not necessarily the truth.
I love how you are making yourself available to really show people the ins and outs, to really create the clarity surrounding which type of franchise to get involved with that's going to actually meet the needs of the person looking to get involved with the franchise. I've definitely been approached over the years, and I'm sure the audience has also come across random opportunities here and there, but there's never true clarity around whether or not it's going to fit the lifestyle or the decisions that I'm trying to make
Exactly.
in the
Yep.
future. So, it's funny on the show, I normally ask the question of waving the magic wand to change something in the industry. But it seems like in some ways, Bob, you have already taken it upon yourself to streamline that for people who are looking for franchise opportunities. You
Yes.
have you've created franchise with Bob and you've made it so that people don't have to guess. They don't have to jump at the opportunities that they've heard of or are aware of, but can really explore and dive into the opportunities that are available in the industry across the board. Because franchise ownership is not something that you want to jump into. And it's not the easiest thing
Absolutely
to
not.
say, let me quit everything else and try to take this on. And of course, recognizing that in the industry, and making those changes is pretty impressive. So I am curious, seeing as how you've already waved the magic wand in the industry and created franchise with Bob, if you had the opportunity to wave it again and could change something else in the franchise industry, what do you think that would be and why?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it would be making sure people don't make a mistake. It is too
Mm,
simple to make a mistake. If people simply, most people, when they decide, you know what, I'm interested in potentially buying a franchise, first thing they
mhm,
do is they go online and they start searching.
mhm,
You're on Google, okay? You're landing on typically portals that franchise companies, about 60% of the companies out there pay to be on
right.
these portals, but they're showing you only what they want you to see up front.
Mhm,
Okay. You can't analyze by the information you're finding on portals. It's
right.
really hard to dig and find out what's behind the curtain, how the secret sauce is made.
Exactly.
So unfortunately, too many people go about it that way,
Mhm,
and a mistake is made because they're
mhm,
just not looking at the right concepts. I
right.
wish in my industry, and there's a lot of people that have jumped into the fray that do what I do. The unfortunate thing is there's some companies or entities that have set up their organizations that bring people in as brokers or consultants or coaches, whatever they want to call themselves. They may
Mhm,
charge them 25 grand up to maybe $100,000 to become part of their organization. They give them a
mhm,
couple of weeks of training. They give them a certificate and say, now you're a franchise expert.
right.
90% of those people wash out in less than a year. But the
Mhm,
real tragedy is they end up hurting a lot of people because
right.
they don't know what they're doing. So I
Mhm,
would, if I could wave a magic wand, I mean, I'm not for government intervention and all that stuff, but if I could wave, in this case, I would love to see regulation in this
mm,
industry. So it truly is only experts that are giving out this information and helping people, as opposed to
mhm,
somebody who was, selling insurance, a month prior, and now they're portrayed as a franchise expert. There's unfortunately too much of that goes around.
right.
So it
Yeah.
takes experience, and not just with a franchise, but preferably with multiple franchises, maybe being
Mhm,
also on the other side of franchising as a franchisor, in an
mhm,
executive position, ownership of franchises. Those things all combine to create the experience network and just knowledge of the industry and getting to know people in the industry and getting to know which ones you can trust in the industry is so, so important. And unfortunately, there's just too many people that are not
mhm,
checking those boxes. So if
mhm.
educating more people is really what it comes down to, and having letting my clients or who's ever clients, making sure they're working with top-notch people that know what they're doing.
I think that's brilliant. I truly think that is a brilliant plan to create some sort of regulation, some sort of certification program in the industry so that if you are going to claim yourself to be a franchise expert or an investment expert for the franchise industry, you should have some sort of regulation for that. So I definitely think that is, far more doable than the time machine I keep asking this audience to build out. So I'm sure we're going to get around to that. And if not, that might even be something that we see in your future, Bob.
I hope so.
So, hey, who knows? But as we're talking about the time machine, I love to go back in time on this show as we did in the beginning, we'll do here in the end. If you had the ability to go back in time, say 10, 15 years, and tell yourself just one thing, what do you feel like that would have been?
Great question. I would have told myself to get into what I'm doing sooner. It has opened the franchise consulting piece of it, because it has opened doors for me and opened doors in relationships and other investment
Mm-hmm,
opportunities, and gave me a much broader scope of understanding of franchises and all the different types of franchises, and
mm-hmm,
which categories of franchises are the best performing categories.
Hmm.
being able to just take the time, understand the brands, not just being in one brand or two brand, but across the board, learning so much about all of these different brands and what makes them tick, which ones are the most profitable, what are the common characteristics amongst the most successful brands. If I could have started my career earlier in this, would have probably given me more opportunities for franchise investing, because I would have been, closer to the flame and seen so many of these franchises as they were emerging. The dirty little secret about franchising is, hey, go find a big brand, buy, McDonald's, buy this, buy that, something you recognize. The opportunity's over with those.
Hmm.
If you're hearing about it, it's probably because it's already sold out in your market. So the best opportunities are in emerging brands, but when I'm
Hmm.
working with a client, I never show an emerging brands unless I know the capital's behind it or really strong
Hmm.
management teams behind it that has been there, done that before. And there's something
Hmm.
bigger behind it. There's an entity that owns it, that built other
Mm.
franchise companies and knows what it's doing. There's so many ways to position yourself for success and reduce the risk in making a bad decision in franchising. Okay.
Get started sooner. What are you waiting for? So if you're out there and you're watching the
Hmm.
show and you haven't gotten started, get started. Your
Yeah.
entrepreneurial journey is waiting. It's waiting. And there are people much like Bob here to guide you through this journey, to help you really figure out what that right fit
Yeah.
truly is. You don't have to just jump into entrepreneurship. If you've been thinking about it and questioning it, but don't want to go through the entire learning curve, because the entrepreneurial journey can be long, it can be grueling, it can be punishing. And
Yes,
if you
it
want
can.
to jump ahead, the best way to do that is with a solid franchise opportunity. And the best way to go forward with a franchise opportunity is with a really trusted advisor on your side. So,
Amen.
Bob, I thank you so much for joining me today and
Been
for
my
sharing your
absolute pleasure, Lori.
expertise. Excellent. Well, I thank you. And please share the best way for the audience and the viewers to reach out.
You can reach out to me simply going to my website at franchisewithbob.com. You can email me at bob@franchisewithbob.com. I'll be happy to send you. I have an ebook that I created. It's a short ebook strictly on semi-passive franchising, people who stay in their job and transition slowly. I'll be happy to send you
Excellent.
that to anybody that free ebook.
Perfect. Well, I will definitely include the links to that on the show notes
Awesome.
page.
Thank you.
Franchise with Bob, of course. Bob, thank you again for joining me this
My
afternoon.
pleasure. It's been great. Thank you.